But, you were talking to me about how important it is to kind of like work with people in a business environment that are good people. Business relationships are real relationships, right? They're not all like surface level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just tough if your team that you're working with is doesn't gel right. If it's like people that aren't your kind of people. I mean, obviously, if you got a bunch of just really unhappy folks, then that's just very difficult to work along with. But beyond that, like if you can find a a workplace where you really vibe with the people you're working with, that just it makes everything so much easier. Um, you're more excited to like go to work. There's less drama.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when we talk about like workplace culture and things like that, because one of the first things I wanted to talk to you about, and I was so curious about, as kind of like an aspiring entrepreneur, is, your inspirations for your company, the ways that you kind of piece things together, because I think every entrepreneur probably has their own system, right? They build their own structure and like lattice, but they learn from different mentors.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that probably remain the same, like across, different markets and industries, but every sector is different. But I mean, workplace culture is super important, right? So I guess that's one of the things that I could ask you about first is like, how did you go about finding that team and building that team? Did it come together kind of just like through serendipity, or did you build it intentionally?
A little bit of both. Um, yeah, I mean, I got into the cannabis industry back in 2008. I started growing. Um, and that was only a year after moving to California from Georgia. Um, but uh, yeah, I started growing. It didn't. The first crop started off pretty well, and then it went to shit pretty quickly.
Okay.
Because we just my roommate and he misread the fertilizer instructions and just like one decimal point over. So we gave it 10x the amount of fertilizer it was supposed to get. So within like 3 hours, the plants were dead. Uh,
Discouraging.
yeah.
But you knew what you did immediately?
Oh yeah. Because it's like immediately the plants just started like just wilting and falling over and like,
Okay.
the only thing that changed was the nutrients that were given. Okay. And now granted, like, okay, we figured out that problem, probably could have gone on from there, but I immediately thought, you know what, like that sucked, but it was really awesome up until that point. So I want to know how to do this right. So I went to Oaksterdam University, not an accredited university, but weed college basically. Started in Oakland. They actually had a big battle with the DEA a couple years after I went there, and the city of Oakland backed them and supported them and countersued the federal government and won. But I went to Oakland, learned from some really revered people in the industry about the plant. And the first thing that they taught us was that if you're in it just for the money, you're in it for the wrong reasons, because this plant can do so many things and help so many people, as well as helping the planet. So that kind of like stuck with me. And so yeah, the condensed version is learned about it there, learned about the history of it, how to grow it, what can be done with the plant, and then just continued on with my roommate, just figuring it out, trial and error.
Was this your college roommate? Was this
No,
somebody
this was post college. So I graduated in 2004.
from Georgia, right?
Uh-huh. And I had a whole separate career for a while in geothermal heating and cooling, and as a project manager for most of that. And that's where I learned the valuable lesson of like how difficult it is to enjoy doing your job if you don't enjoy the company of your coworkers. Like, you don't have to be like, oh, I can't wait to go like hang out after work with these folks. But if you want to at least be able to be like, I enjoy working with these people. Like, we get along well, we can communicate well, which is the biggest thing. When there's just like a bunch of shit talking behind people's backs, in part just because people come from such different walks of life and aren't willing to embrace like those differences, then it just creates a constant rub. And over time, if you're not able to, surmount that, then it just becomes, toxic to you. So when I started with Serenity, I was starting with my roommate at the time, and who I already knew I got along with, and he had his skill set, which was definitely different from my skill set. He's very mechanically gifted.
It sounds like you both had somewhat of an engineering background, even if that's not what you sort of studied.
He's got an engineering brain, mechanical brain. I grew up with a dad for an engineer, so and I'm definitely pretty good with numbers. So I have that ability, but then I had like the business education, the collegiate experience, and he had like the practical hands-on experience. Like, he was someone who would go wrench on cars and like rebuild engines and stuff because he liked to. So we started that together, and eventually once we switched from growing cannabis to extracting it, which there was a whole other process in getting to that point of what led to that. But I wasn't going to jump into that without him because I didn't have all that mechanical expertise. I was really scared of getting this expensive ass piece of equipment and not being confident that I could fix anything if anything went wrong. But I was very confident that he could. And so, we started that together, and then brought on a third person whom he knew from his time in the kitchen at a restaurant. This other guy, this badass chef. He'd worked at multiple Michelin star restaurants, and also had experience and a background in graphic design. And so brought him on to help out, which included doing all the design work. So now we had an artistic, creative type skilled in that area. And so we had a solid tripod at that point, which ended up culminating at the peak on the cannabis side of things was when we won the Emerald Cup for best CO2 oil, and then Hempcon. But
That sounds like it was a crazy journey to get to the point where you win an Emerald Cup, because that's a really heralded award for people who are unfamiliar with the cannabis business. It's like winning a Grammy, basically, or an Oscar.
Yeah, it was like winning a Grammy, and I did not anticipate that, even though I felt like our stuff was the best or on par with the best. But I figured all those types of events are rigged and it's pay to play. And then all of a sudden found out we won. It's like, holy shit. Wait, are you messing with me? Like, wait, we really, oh my God, to be like a garage band who's only made like one tape out of their garage, like, wins a Grammy.
Right.
Like, what the fuck? Oh my God. Well, now what do we do? Holy shit. But, it was weird because, we had developed our procedures and always not cutting corners, going above and beyond to just try and make the best possible product. But unfortunately, our communication wasn't great, and admittedly, my level of involvement in the trenches, doing all the dirty work, was not where it needed to be as a leader. And so there was a lot of animosity there, and we almost completely imploded. within 3 months of winning the Emerald Cup. Granted, there was also a lot of stress going on because that was the last Emerald Cup before recreational cannabis came into play. It had been approved, but the next year was when regulations started to kick in, even though the state hadn't determined what those regulations would be. But we knew like we weren't going to get to keep operating in this gray area, Prop 215, to where all you had to do was have signatures of like medical marijuana card holders.
Yeah, that sounds like it's like an insane time. That's like creating an app like as the .com boom happens. Like, you know, I mean, I think there's like a couple things we could talk about there. I mean, one is like how every company kind of gets tested. There's like a litmus test, whether it's the market or the internal dynamics or, you know, different things like that. I think, you know, motivations probably get questioned in some way at every point when a company's like getting off the ground. I noticed you saying like there's like a high level of accountability. Like you were saying, like it kind of was me, but I'm sure it wasn't just that. What was it like, you know, what was that experience like, and how did you guys kind of like move through that? Because I know a couple people who are trying to start companies, myself included, and when things hit the fan like that, doing damage control and troubleshooting, especially with people's feelings, it's like the hardest part I found, because you can kind of like work around, you know, market limitations and things of that nature. But if, you know, two people don't feel like they're valued, or if one person doesn't feel like they're valued, that's like the most worrisome thing, right? So I guess first I would ask you is like, yeah, how did you kind of deal with that?
Well, of course, like when the the would-be mutiny began, I was pissed, because while I definitely had not been jumping in and pulling my weight in certain areas, I also I wasn't sharing enough of all the stresses and other things that I was doing. And it's tricky when people are only familiar with their role in a business, or like their roles and a couple of other roles, and they don't understand all the other facets of the business and all the things that go on. That's what's great about like that show Dirty Jobs, and where, you know, a lot of these really successful companies have leaders at the top that have done many or all of the jobs in the business, or at least go through and spend like a day at like every level of the business, so they can understand firsthand what it takes, and they can relate and empathize to everyone within the organization.
Right, like how CEOs are sometimes, or were sometimes, the best employees, right? And they like understand kind of both sides of the coin, or they understood one side of the coin so well, it made them equipped to move up in the ladder.
Yep. Yeah, and so like, and to be fair, I hadn't gone in and done a few of the components on the extraction production side, and so I wasn't quite understanding some of the things that they were dealing with and going through. And I talked to one of my best friends, who's now, you know, my main business partner, and he had tons of experience in managing people. He'd managed water parks, and for, you know, his whole professional career. And so he'd had huge teams and just always dealing with people and team building. And he guided me. And so what we did is we sat down, I sat down with my guys and had a pen and pad, and I asked them questions about like their frustration points, what they thought we should be doing, what they thought I should be doing, and what I wasn't doing well enough, and basically just opened up before him and sat there and, you know, and took it. And he guided me and said, look, you need to just sit there, write it down, listen. If you didn't catch something, ask them to repeat it. Don't react, just allow them to voice their opinions, and take everything as potential constructive criticism. Don't take it personally. View this as an opportunity for growth and increased awareness of how you can improve. And I did, and it was a huge ego check moment, and it was very challenging. It's always challenging when you're listening to someone else that you're close with telling you about things that you're doing wrong, to not either defend your position or to then attack them in return. Be like, oh yeah, well, you're not doing this. It's like, well, that's not what we're not here to discuss what you're doing or not doing. We know that there are things going on my end that need to improve. So let's dive into that. And so that was the case, and I processed that and started doing the shit that I needed to do, and re-earning the respect of the guys, and that helped tremendously, and it was vital because at the same time was the whole transition of the industry, and I was going and talking to different entities and looking at raising funds, but to keep doing what we were doing was going to require $3 to $5 million in capital, and that was with no margin of error, for no backup money. That would have been all spent on the new equipment, legal fees, permits. We would have to start renting building space for anywhere from 6 to 18, even 24 months, depending, before we could even get going on operations. Because at this point, the state government hadn't even decided how it was going to regulate everything. They just knew, well, you can only operate in these zoned areas. You're going to have to pay so much for this, and this permit, and X, Y, and Z need to happen. We'll figure out down the road the exact specifics of how you can process and where and what percentage tax there will be on certain avenues. And so it was a very intimidating landscape, especially still sitting on that turbulent team of, well, I think I've righted the ship, but it's only been a little bit. And then on the other side of the coin was the Farm Bill had just passed. And so hemp became federally legal.
Right, which was big for CBD. Right?
Yeah, and backing up, I don't know, maybe 9 months or so, we had come across this strain of cannabis called Remedy, which I had actually grown some before in my last year of growing. And it was fantastic, and I sold that all that crop to a couple of the really legit, holistically minded dispensaries in Sacramento. And because at the time there was not much CBD stuff available. People were, even really knowledgeable people in the industry, were not very familiar with CBD. It was almost like this lore, and out of Humboldt there was some magical strains that seemed to be way better for people with certain ailments, and so then people started getting their hands on that, and trying different growing techniques, crossbreeding, etc. So anyway, fast forward to early 2017, we got our hands on some of that and extracted some, and we would make, we were mostly making vape cartridges and dab sauces, but we were also doing edibles, and the whole time I had been tinkering with topicals on the side, and I'll get into that a little later.
I definitely want to talk more about that. This stuff right here.
Yeah, but we would occasionally get feedback from people about how the products we made helped them, manage their pain or have some various medical benefits. But when we got that Remedy strain and made some stuff on that, we got an uptick in people like just out of nowhere telling us, like reaching out to communicate, like, hey, this really helped me. And one woman in particular, now this is not a medical claim, this is just what someone told us.
Okay.
But she said that she was able to kick opioids,
Wow.
and her mother, who has multiple sclerosis, that's a tough one, she was able to finally get up and walk around the house without excruciating pain for the first time in over 20 years.
Now, was it this stuff here, the topical balm, or was it?
No, it was some hard candies that we made, some edibles.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Wow. That's powerful. That's really powerful.
Yeah, and so that was like, that felt really, really good. I mean, it felt great making connoisseur dabs and just having the ego stroke of making the best, and also knowing we're making good, clean stuff, because at the time, a lot of people were using like nasty solvents like hexane and shit.
So, and this was all after. Was this after or before your Emerald Cup and before? So
That was before the Emerald Cup win. It was like, actually, that was right around the same time, because the farm we were working with for the strain that we won the cup was the farm that provided us the remedy to make stuff with.
Okay, so you're experimenting with that, and then you guys win the Emerald Cup, and then was that right before 2018 you're talking about?
Yeah, that was fall of 2017.
And so then Farm Bill comes on live 2018,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like a whirlwind, but you have something really powerful, like really good. You work the internal stuff out, it sounds like. And then now you're faced with this huge, like, legal kind of just hurricane. Would that describe that probably correctly?
Yeah, I mean, the industry has always been super turbulent, and, it was definitely, I mean, I wake up every morning like, I'm a criminal. Like, I haven't even gotten out of bed, and I've broken five laws. Cool. Like, yeah, there's a little bit of, I'm a bad boy, but it's pretty stressful knowing, like, all right, if shit goes sideways, I'm in jail.
Yeah. Normally companies just have to adapt to the economy. It's not like
Legal framework.
The government's like waging war on their market share actively.
No, so that was we had basically two paths. It was a very pronounced fork in the road of, okay, we stick with it on the cannabis side. We take this momentum that we've like culminating in the Emerald Cup and Hempcon wins and our championship pedigree, and go out and secure the funding, because it was out there, and go that direction. But there was something wasn't feeling quite right with that, and part of it was the turbulence, the internal turbulence, and just the I mean, it's a little scary being like, gonna take millions of dollars from someone to like do this, and then like really put on big boy pants and come out of like the garage and into like the legit business world and way higher stakes. Well, financially.
Still deep water, very deep water. So, and when you were going about getting that funding, I think that's something a lot of people would be curious about, especially for the cannabis business, because we can talk about how big banks are definitely not helping.
They're not
cannabis business owners.
Yeah, they're not stoked on it.
So most of that funding was privately acquired. There's no like venture. You can't like. Well, I suppose you could VC firm it with a firm in Canada or something. I'm very illiterate, so I would hope you could explain that a little bit more to me.
Yeah, well, we had gotten started with the friends and family network, so then tapping into needing funds of the millions of dollars. I don't come from that kind of network, so that would have been angel investors. There were VC firms definitely diving into that. We were going to the big conventions and I remember in 2017, because rec was right around the corner, recreational.
Mm-hmm.
We were seeing. I'd been going to the like MJ BizCon and some of these others for a handful of years, and it was all of a sudden like, wow, there's a lot of suits here now. Okay, and yeah, people with money from all over the world looking to get in. So yeah, not institutional money like the banks, but people who have buku money from their liquid or their ability to work with their bank, and they've got, because once you get into those numbers, like you're rubbing elbows with the right people, the higher ups in the banks, and they just let things kind of, okay, this business entity is going to do some other venture, and we don't even really need to know, like, you tell us this is what you're going to do. I'm not saying that's how they all were operating, but just that a lot of people with bigger accounts ready to dive in to this industry. But that would have meant taking on that money and getting into bed with whoever that is. And
which I would imagine is, depending on the individual, if you don't know their history, you have to look into a lot of these people. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing why relationships are so important, right? And when somebody's lending you millions of dollars, I would imagine there's not like, you can't be friends as much as you maybe were previously at that point, or it's harder to be.
Yeah, and you're going to have to do your homework on them. And I mean, coming from the underground cannabis industry, where there is no shortage of do-gooders and no shortage of sketchy fools, and
criminals. Yeah.
I mean, Cartel is big, and they still are. And so
was that a world that you ever got dragged into unknowingly, or kind of like, or were those faces that you ever saw getting into the industry? Is that an inevitability for somebody looking to get into that market, especially in California?
No, it's not inevitable, especially nowadays. But at the time, it was like, it was always there on the fringe. Like, it would only have taken a few conversations to connect dots and go meet some cartel players and make some things happen. Which, it's like, when desperate times, you're like, oh, I mean, I could, but like, and I haven't had firsthand experience, so maybe the stuff I see on TV and in the news and everything is blown out of proportion. But I'm pretty sure it's not the best idea to get in bed with the cartel. So, but like, I used to listen to this podcast, How I Built This, on NPR, and they interview successful entrepreneurs of all sorts, like Richard Branson, and just a ton of successful individuals. And a couple things that just were a recurring theme of advice that they would give was, be very careful of who you take money from, because like, now you're in bed with them, you're stuck with them, and they can either be of great benefit to you, or they can be a huge pain in your ass. And not knowing that was definitely contributing to my stress or aversion towards staying on the cannabis side. But then there was something else too. And when I looked at the hemp side of the coin, it was, okay, well, we're not going to be doing vape cartridges and dabs. This will be for making the balm and the roll-ons and the massage oil stuff, and working towards making edibles with high CBD content and things that aren't necessarily as psychoactive, and it's purely wellness oriented. And
did you make that decision when the Farm Bill was kind of like right in that timeline?
We knew the Farm Bill was going to pass, and so that's what started the debate of which path to go through. And then it did pass, like right around the same time that we won the Emerald Cut.
And for people who don't know what that is, in maybe like 15 seconds, you could explain it better than I could. Like, what was the main takeaway from that bill?
So the Farm Bill it expanded on in 2014 the pilot program that they passed where they legalized industrial hemp, which all hemp is cannabis that's below 0.3% THC in the flower or in the plant, I should say. And so beyond that, that's pretty much all they defined. And that's created its own headaches. But in 2018, instead of it being a pilot program where each state could do it, but it had to be like through a university, it made it to where it's legal in all 50 states. And as long as the crops in the field are below 0.3% THC and the end products are below 0.3%, then it's all gravy. Now, of course, they were too specific and they called it Delta 9 THC. And as we now know, there are many different forms of THC. And so that left loopholes that have been exploited. And now they're working to restrict those. But it opened up the door to make, cannabis products that are high in CBD and low in THC, or high in other cannabinoids, just low in THC. And pretty much from the get-go of, as soon as we got our CO2 extractor, which we got into because when I went to massage school, I learned about essential oils there and their healing powers. And I learned that some essential oils are technically extracts because it's very inefficient or even impossible to extract the oils via traditional steam distillation.
Right.
And so CO2 extraction was the best way, the most highly regarded way to do that and maintain the integrity of the plant profile and all the healing compounds. So I thought, cannabis doesn't extract through water very well. Cannabinoids are hydrophobic, so they won't mix in with it. And so we looked at CO2 extraction and got that. And one of my thoughts the whole time was, oh man, like massages feel great. What if you could infuse the massage oil or lotion with cannabis extract?
With your product, yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge, your product is it feels geared toward like that spa kind of vibe anyways.
Yeah.
Higher end.
It was definitely a passion project. Tinkering with that on the side, playing around with formulas to get the consistency right, and then searching and figuring out what essential oils I wanted to use for it. Like figuring out the aromatics to be, pleasurable, but selecting specific essential oils for their healing impact to help the body heal itself.
So it sounds like, your college education was it helped you develop a business mind, and then you went to it's Oaksterdam University. So that was your cannabis education. Mm-hmm. And then you also became a massage therapist and you learned about essential oils. So all of these sort of different fields intersected in this product. And well, obviously you have you had to pick up a chemistry fluency or at least proficiency to be able to do some of this stuff anyways, or even have these conversations with engineers and things like that. So, I'm curious how, and it sounds like that just came together by way of you following your interests. How did you brand this thing? I'll show some close-ups of this product because for people who are interested in logos, branding, marketability, I feel like this product is really strong, and the quality of this product specifically, this is my favorite product of the ones that I've seen that you guys have. The quality is there too, the different ingredients. So was this all you, or was this working with your team to kind of get super creative and strategize, or was it really just kind of you following your intuition and creating something that you felt like you would want to use?
Yes to all.
Yes. Okay.
Definitely,
All of the
definitely a
above.
team effort in the the aesthetic. Um, I had, imitation is the greatest form of flattery, they say, and I saw uh, another brand that had like a bamboo and glass packaging to it. I thought, oh, I really like that, and I had already uh, knew that I wanted to not use plastic as much or as little as possible. It's really difficult to get away from any sort of plastic when you're in a consumer packaged goods industry. Um, it's becoming easier, but yeah, I like just for environmental sake of less plastic waste, but then also essential oils react to almost everything except for glass and some certain types of treated steel or aluminum. Um, so I was looking for glass packaging, and bamboo on the top made more sense, even though there's still plastic on the inside of that, which is something that I'm working to get a solution for. But then also like you want to convey that uh, higher quality look and feel, so that when someone sees the packaging, they get the feel like, okay, this is like a good product. This like no one's going to the length of like creating this sexy appeal and this sleek design and this nice, more expensive packaging just to put a bunch of crap on the inside. That does happen. It's not what we do, but it does happen. Um, and that's where with the team effort, it was really great to have such a smart designer with just kind of a knack for being able to visualize how to make something look appealing. And we went back and forth a lot on um, what we wanted to make the packaging look like, and then went through a bunch of iterations. And we, just as we had on the cannabis side, we continued to hone and refine. And it's funny, like we kept some of the old packaging, and every now and then, like we'd it'd be 3 years later, and we look like, oh man, this is what we used to put on the shelves. Oh
Right.
my god. So it's definitely been a learning process throughout it. And one thing that I would say for anyone looking to start a brand is never stop uh, honing your craft, honing your image, your message. Just continue to keep an open mind on can you do things better, and allow the entity, allow it to evolve. Um, sometimes that results in, you're like, well, nope, like still haven't come up with an idea to, and a way to improve this. So like, don't have to change it. So maybe we're introducing another product or doing something else also with the brand to grow. But yeah, just keeping an open mind and continuing to try and do better.
I love that. I mean, we all have a vision. I feel like, the first iterations are never what we imagine them to be. Any venture that I've had has been like that. It's like a process of breaking through all of the, drafts that are just not even close to standard. But entrepreneurs, I love engineers. I love entrepreneurs, like in that mindset, because it's like the constant tinkering, and kind of the not giving up. Because I see this now, right? But I mean, I don't know if I would be able to hang with you like through the V1 through V1000 to get to this point, So that's just, I don't know. It's kudos to you. It speaks to like, persistence. But speaking of that persistence, it's like a couple things. Like, has the company kind of like reached that vision yet where do you see it going? And in spite of like all this new stuff, I kind of want to talk about 280E for people who don't know what that is. And is that still affecting your business now that you guys are strictly CBD and kind of like in that market?
No, so that was something that also was important when making our decision at the fork in the road was 280E is an IRS tax code that, for those who don't know, that it doesn't allow normal business deductions for entities involved in anything illegal, which is kind of like, it's very confusing. Like, wait, if you're doing illegal stuff, like, then aren't you just like an illegal business? The IRS is cool taking your tax money. Like, you can be, selling bricks of cocaine, but they'll still gladly take your tax dollars. They just won't let you get certain deductions, and then they'll come after you then. Like, so with cannabis, because it's still federally illegal, it's still a Schedule 1 narcotic with no medical value. It falls under this Form 280E, to where no cannabis business in the United States can take a standard business deduction. Like, they can't deduct labor or rent. So they're essentially getting taxed on their gross revenue for the most part.
Right. And so for the people like even relatively like proficient in business, tax write-offs are a big part of what allow businesses to stay afloat. Your taxable and untaxable income is based on what you can write off. Normally, businesses overstep what they can write off. Mm-hmm. They pay for some of their own dinners on, yep, through write-offs. Like, there's plenty of ways that it's supposed to be for, business expenses, health insurance for employees, business, flights, travel, things like that. And it allows you to bear some of that cost of what it takes to run your business. For cannabis businesses, 280E prohibits you from writing off anything, medical and health insurance expenses, freight and shipping, advertising and marketing, inventory, rent and utilities, software, like really basic things that any business needs in the modern world to function. For you people wondering why legal cannabis is so expensive, that's one of the reasons. And I feel like it's still giving, black markets the opportunity to kind of flourish.
Oh, yeah.
It's keeping the cartel in the game, or mm-hmm, not just the cartel, but I mean, any illegal, illicit operations, right? There's people doing legal, relatively ethical business. And then there's people who are, still trafficking drugs and being violent, and this law is one of the reasons that is still possible for those operations. I'm sure that's something that's like a bane of the legal cannabis business existence, right?
Yeah. I remember when we were looking to jump in, we were talking with some savvy accountants, and already a lot of folks were figuring out how to structure the businesses in order to still take those deductions. And it was, they definitely weren't going to be able to get the deductions like normal businesses. So there's a certain percentage of that still they're just going to get screwed. But they were figuring out counter moves to, okay, well, this the dispensary, for an example, would just it would be paying rent on the space that's just like the 2 square foot area around the cash register. Yeah. And then they'd set up a whole other business that is doing other stuff not related to the cannabis. And that's every time the employee steps away from the register, oh, nope, now I'm working for the other business and I'm going and doing this other stuff. And so they're able to take those deductions that way and do some clever accounting. But still, a certain percentage of it is just, nope, there's no way to get around it. You're not going to get to take that deduction. And then beyond that, the ridiculous taxes that, at least in California, are slapped onto the cannabis industry. Like it has since changed to a degree, but at the inception of recreational, there was a tax on the farmer, and then once the cannabis then was picked up by a distributor, because you couldn't have the farmer transport the cannabis to a dispensary or to a processor. You have to have some logistics company basically come and get it. Now there's a tax there. And then once they turn that cannabis over to the extraction facility, then the extraction facility pays an additional tax before it goes back into the hands of the distributor and then over to a manufacturer of finished product. And then from there, so basically every time the product moves anywhere, it gets taxed. And then once it's to the dispensary, then there's an additional tax on top of regular sales tax to the end user. So at the beginning of recreational cannabis in California, on certain products you're paying up to 60% tax. And so that kept things super high, in addition to all of the licensing fees, and different municipalities stack their own stuff. Like the city of Sacramento, we looked at, they were charging 4% of gross revenue tax for any permitted cannabis business. That's on top of all the other state fees, all of the different taxes that you're having to pay on top of stuff. Boom, plus 4% of gross revenue, not net revenue, gross. But like just because they felt like, oh, well, you guys, you're desperate to get in the game, and this is a drug, so we're just going to tax the shit out of it. And it was so short-sighted. There are even perfect examples in, Oregon did a little bit better job, but Washington and Colorado, who legalized several years earlier, and I'm more familiar with Colorado because my parents used to live there, and I was looking at moving the business there. And for their first few years, they had the same thing going on. They were just taxing the shit out of it and charging just exorbitant amounts for license fees. And after like a year and a half, they're sitting there going, wait, why aren't we raking in all this tax revenue, and why is the black market thriving? Well, dummy, economics drives the process, and if the legal entities aren't able to compete price-wise, then they're not going to succeed.
Hold out. Yeah, people still want their neighborhood dealer.
Well, and especially, you're talking about a whole industry that, aside from excluding new consumers in the industry, everyone already has someone they knew they could get weed from.
Exactly, yeah.
And they're just going to continue to do so. The novelty of going to the store wears off when you're like, I got to pay triple or quadruple the price? Yeah, nah, it's cool. I'll go get it from my homie, or like, oh, I got a friend who knows a friend, and they have a bunch of weed. Like,
a lot of the time people trust the quality of those names in their neighborhood anyways. They don't,
well, especially if they're savvy consumers in the regular food industry, and you look at all the shit that goes in a lot of these products.
Bingo, yeah.
And from big businesses that don't care about you, versus Mary's Medicinals over here, they've been doing it for a while, and she care about us. Like, it's just putting good quality ingredients in here, and it's minimal plastic packaging. It's the whole core of what the cannabis industry was supposed to be, is trying to take this magical plant and get it to the people to help them.
Right.
And so, yeah, it seems like California politicians are starting to wake up and smell the coffee and realize that, okay, we got to lower some of these barriers to entry and lower some of these taxes
You don't say.
Otherwise, like, we're not gonna get it done, especially since the stakes have become less for having a black market operation, because it's no longer like a completely illegal thing. It is federally, but as far as the state's concerned,
It's forgiven.
you're like, okay, I'm not doing like 10 years of hard time. It's they're gonna find me if we get busted. And yeah, it's been crazy. The black market has changed too, and because of that, like you have the Chinese organized crime syndicates have really jumped in, and so they're renting massive warehouses and just cranking out cannabis, and they manage to smuggle their people over that they know if they get popped, they just get exported back to China, and they'll just send some new folks over, get a different building, and they flood the market with as cheap a stuff as they can. And so it's really sad, because even your local neighborhood folks have started to have a hard time even staying up on the black market. It's either the government screwing it, or the cartels. So it's been very turbulent on that side, and that sort of stuff continues to make me sad, but also thankful that I made the decision for us to go on the hemp CBD side.
The 280,
of things.
yeah, the 280 on the other side of the 280E.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you have friends, or do you have any like kind of like horror stories about what that's like? I mean, I know there's actually quite a bit of content floating around right now about, ex, farmers who, had pretty much no choice but to start doing business with like syndicates like that. And I mean, I know it's probably a terrifying situation to be in. Especially if you're like a legacy farmer, or you're a new guy who's just trying to do it the right way,
Yeah, I honestly haven't kept up with too many of the folks that stayed mired in the industry. I know some of the dispensaries that I used to work with, like they're still managing to do well, and that because location, and providing a good service. On the plus side is like on the legal setup is that at least there's a structure there, and so while the playing field isn't truly level, it's still the same rules apply. Obviously if you have big financial backing, then you're able to make more moves, and you're at an advantage. But if you already have a good following, a loyal customer base, then you're solid. And then at the end of the day, it comes down to the quality of your product and your marketing. Like, you can have the best product out there, but or the best service, but if it's not being marketed, if people aren't hearing about it, then you ain't selling it.
Right. Yeah, it's hard for it to speak for itself. Like if people don't know about it, after a while, once it has that reputation.
That's been our struggle. Is not having the funds to do that and the marketing expertise. And with CBD, even still, there's not as many of the traditional avenues allowed for marketing. Like Facebook and Instagram are just now beginning to sort of allow advertisements by hemp companies.
There are certain companies that are trying to make it easier. Is that you mentioned something about the company Square, which is Jack Dorsey's. I think it's his second company after Twitter. They have like some kind of like transaction program or something like that for CBD.
Pilot program, yeah.
Pilot program. So
we
what is that?
We lucked out and got in on the second round of the pilot program because one of our a farmer with his own CBD brand that we used to work with and do extraction for, source material from, he got in on the Square pilot program. So for payment processing, which that was its own nightmare when we got started. we couldn't use regular payment processing. Like, it's fairly legal. We can have our website. We can sell it online, ship to all 50 states. Oh, but like the banks don't want to work with us, so we can't get normal credit card processing where the fees would be like 1.5 to 2.5% standard.
What were they charging?
Well, they wouldn't even work with us, so we would have to work with high risk processors, and they were charging anywhere from like 7.5 to 14%.
Wow.
On every transaction.
Every transaction.
Yep, just so much extra juice. And early, we were going to have to do some weird stuff like either open an account in the Cayman Islands.
Okay, that's
or we could
offshore immediately.
Or we were going to have to rent
flag.
an office desk at like a co-working space in Europe, and with a VPN there.
Jesus
and that's
Christ.
where like transactions would be routed through. And I'm sitting here like, wait, I thought we were switching into a federally legal fucking industry here. Like, this is still the same bullshit, man. Like, oh my god. And so we figured out. Well, we got on with one company, Elevon, and I think they were charging like 4.9%. So
it's still high,
hefty, but not not quite as bad. But after like 3 months, they pulled the plug because their parent bank was, I think, U.S. Bank. And once they figured out that Elevon was like approving all these CBD companies, and they weren't doing a whole lot of due diligence, so you had a bunch of companies that were also selling like kratom and
all that,
whatever else,
kava, all that.
Yeah. So they shut it down, and we had to pivot, and we had a clever solution that we implemented, and then eventually we were able to get into the Square pilot program, and it's like 3.9%.
And that's it's a really legit company.
But a legit, like, so many small businesses start off using Square because their interface is super easy. Their point of sale stuff is very simple. It's a little bit pricier than when you get in with some of the other processing services, but their hardware, their integration is top notch, and just it's kind of like I'm more of a Droid and PC user, but I liken Square to Apple, where it's like,
for sure,
yep, like it works well, it integrates, like it's pretty simple,
good design, user friendly.
Yeah. And so we're still with them, and they're just now bringing the rates back down a little bit. Still not down to like where it is for just normal businesses,
right.
But not crazy high risk. And now there are other processors getting involved that are competitive or even lower rates, which I've still stayed with Square because I'm familiar with the interface. I like that support, and they did us a solid. So we're sticking with them, until such point as it doesn't make very good business sense. But we're still at a small enough like transactional revenue point that the extra percentage is
a couple percent. That extra like 2.5% is like not gonna
versus
make or break.
Shifting everything to something new. Who knows what the integration is going to be like on the back end, what kind of headaches I might suffer through, or if they're still going to be around, because it's still not the main banks working with this. In fact, we just got denied a line of credit from a bank that the loan officer and on the loan side, they had it all approved, but the banking account side, someone in compliance determined nope, and they're just still not working with any CBD businesses. So there's still headaches, still less access to capital than a regular industry.
You don't want more private investment. You're not looking to acquire more private capital right now. You want something like more legitimate, like a line of credit.
Something more institutional at this stage for us is what we've been trying to figure out, because
safer.
There are some quick pivots, some ability to just increase our product offering and spend some marketing dollars.
Marketing money. I was gonna say, yeah, this product is so ready to be marketed. I feel like if this product could have just a commercial, you know. I mean, yeah. So is that's sort of where the business is headed? Then you wanna maybe, I don't know. It's we were talking about Canadian banks, it being legal and federally legal in Canada. So, but that's like a loophole to get a loan from a bank in Canada and then do business in America with those dollars.
I've heard that, well, and credit unions have been working within the cannabis industry for a while now. Like credit union up in Humboldt started working with the cannabis people up there a few years ago, and so it's available and around, but being indebted already to our angel investors from the onset, I'm apprehensive of taking on more money without having fine-tuned and dialed in some things on our end and figuring out, having a confidence in our marketing plan of, okay, like marketing's not cheap, and we've been burned before by some marketing agencies. How are we getting this help? How can we do some things to get the message out?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is expanding our product offering.
Right. Distribution, like storefront stuff.
Well, yeah, we're in like 30 stores in Northern California.
Okay.
So we have a good, there's all like independent retailers, natural food stores,
Okay.
holistic wellness places.
I was going to say, yeah, like what about like spas, you know? Like I could see this being in a ton of spas because I know I read something recently. I can probably link the article too about how more spas are incorporating products like CBD products so they can upcharge because they want to find ways to kind of like, so they'll stock some CBD thing, but then, you know, upcharge it 900% based on what they paid for the CBD or like
They
tincture
do.
or balm.
We supply, I think, about 8 or 9 different independent massage therapists for their practices. What I've found is that a lot of these spas and a lot of places in general, what they're doing is you can so easily just buy white label CBD products where you contact this manufacturing lab. They already have like a suite of products that they make, and you just supply your logo, and they'll send you product.
Oh,
And so everyone's like doing their own brand.
interesting.
And so many of the brands that are out there are like that you find online. It's the same product that 50 other brands have, or maybe it's just slightly tweaked a little bit.
Are those all wholesale like product? Like they're just
wholesale
like
or just
they're
online direct to
discounted?
consumer?
Yes.
No, like so the white label you buy at a wholesale rate from
Right.
a manufacturer.
Okay, so they're super discounted.
Now it's not dissimilar from how most cosmetics, most consumer packaged goods, food items. That's just kind of how it works, not only in America but in most industrialized nations. Is because of the rules and regulations and how things are manufactured and economies of scale, you have these manufacturing labs that can make all sorts of stuff. And once a brand, develops their product and gets big enough, or if they start off with enough money, then they pivot and you have these labs make your product for you. And then they handle all of that, and they fill the packaging, they label it, all this stuff, and then send it to you, and then you ship it out. Or they send it to a fulfillment center, and whoever owns the company in that group, they might not even ever touch the product. And so we've been doing it. I've made every single product that we've sold with my hands, clean hands, but knowing that eventually, it'll get to that space where we're going to be able to utilize help in manufacturing. I still want to be involved, ideally, and go and participate in the production.
Right.
Because I feel that there's that human, energetic value to it. I walk in both worlds of the practical engineering type of mentality plus the woo woo. And
Be hands-on, be like a Richard Branson, like super dynamic.
yeah, just being involved, and I feel like that intention carries through into quality of a product.
And it does. I mean, this is standout. I mean, this is not like some wholesale thing you get offline. This is the concoction of, you probably know it. I know it's on the box. It's not on here, but it's like there's juniper, there's lavender. Even the smell is like, it almost does smell like a spa, So I feel I would invest in this product. I mean,
Well, and I mean, I use it every day, and I've always had it where it's, we have a full money back guarantee, because if it doesn't work for someone, I don't want their money for what it was, and I want to hear how or why it didn't work so I can improve. But I think we've had 3 returns in 5 years. So maybe everyone's just lazy and they don't want to try and get their money back, but it's the stuff works. And so, like, with circling back to the getting some additional funding, it takes money to make new products and expand. And we have not tapped into the gummy sector of CBD, which is now like the #1 selling product in the industry in America, because everyone loves their gummies for their health and a little bit of sugar. But I've always been pushed back against that because we didn't have a packaging solution. The packaging was either going to be big plastic containers or big glass containers, which increased the impact on Mother Nature and
the price too. It costs more.
So we finally found some plant-based packaging that's home compostable that we're able to utilize for our gummies, that they are food safe. And so I'm working on that now, and partnering with the manufacturing lab who has expertise in making gummies and utilizing some cool ingredients like functional mushrooms like cordyceps and reishi.
Oh, that's big. Huge market.
And maca, kava.
Yeah.
And as with everything, like being really conscious about what the goal is, like, which is trying to help people heal themselves or maintain homeostasis in their bodies and live a good life, and at the same time doing that in a sustainable fashion, making sure that every ingredient is sourced from a good place, everything's clean, minimizing our footprint. So it's tough not sacrificing some of those core morals or ethics, and just okay, well, for now we'll just sell in a bunch of like plastic packaging, and then we'll fix that down the road. And maybe that's the way it should have gone, but still standing and ready to expand and continue to help people out. And I'm so thankful that we chose this path, because it really feels good to make products that help people. And as I've learned from my long journey of chronic pain, that it's so relieving to get a little bit of help in getting rid of some of your pain, and makes it so much easier to go about and be your best self and help others. It's tough when you're in pain all the time to not kind of be a Scrooge, to be an asshole. Like, I get it. That's why I try not to judge people when they're seemingly being just mean. And it's like, well, they got some shit going on, I'm sure. Like, whether it's mental, emotional, or simply physical. Like, physical pain, it's tough, man. Like, I had a kidney stone back in 2016 or 17, And I thought that was just, I didn't know it was a kidney stone at first. I thought it was, I had finally gone to the gym and like worked out my back hard for the first time in like a couple years. I've had back pain for a long time. And I thought that all this crazy pain I was experiencing was from that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh fuck, is this what it's gonna be like? Like,
Right.
I don't know if I even want to live if I'm gonna have to deal with shit like this just from like a light to medium workout at the gym.
Right.
Go to the hospital, turns out it's a kidney stone, and holy shit. But at the hospital, in the ER, while I'm waiting to go do the MRI, they gave me some opioids. The first was like some pills, and it brought me from like a 9.5 down to like an 8.5. And I was like, no, I need something better. So then they came and shot me up with Dilaudid. And as the nurse was pushing the plunger down, I could just feel just coolness course through my veins, and everything in my body, all the pain just dissipated. I was still aware it was there, but I didn't feel it, and it was awesome. And I immediately thought, oh my God, this is how people are getting hooked on heroin. Like, because when you're in pain all the time, man, like, and something takes that away, even if it's just for a little bit, it's hard not to just desperately seek whatever that is. I'm just thankful that I have such a good support group and upbringing and knowledge base to know, like, that's not a solution to the problem.
Right.
That's just going in a different way, and that's going to be worse.
It's like putting like a bandage on like a splinter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't treat the source. And yeah, your product most definitely, I think, is that's your intention with this, is just to
help that healing process. Like, it's, you know, for as far as like the pain component, it's not going to magically make your pain forever go away, but it can help minimize it enough so that maybe then you can start moving your body and do the things necessary to get your body properly aligned and functioning. Yeah. to feel better.
Make it manageable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to what comes next. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what you guys do next pivots in your next push.
Me too. Yeah. Hoping to, we've got a campaign coming up to try and reach out to a bunch more body workers, massage therapists, to help them help their clients, and tap the gummy game, and, you know, get some help in just marketing, figuring that out. I wear so many hats, and that's not my area of expertise. I've always been, you know, I was raised in the South, so like, I'm humble, and so I don't even do anything really on my own social media, like promoting it, because I don't know, it feels weird, or like I'm, you know, puffing myself up. But it's
right,
like,
right.
I know that I've got to jump on that, because I'm doing a disservice really by not sharing that. Someone recently told me that if you feel that you have something worth sharing, then you owe it to the world to share it. You have a responsibility to share whatever that thing is to others. Because that's, you know, at the end of the day, it's how can we serve each other? And that's how we all help up and continue to elevate society.
That's powerful. That's powerful stuff. Thank you for coming on, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it.